You were taught Jamaica's story starts with Columbus in 1494. Ask what's underground, and most people picture a few bats in a tourist cave. But Jamaicans who lived here 50 years say they never knew any of this existed. The real record isn't in the school books. It's 60 feet down in the dark. Here are 12 things pulled from these caves that still can't be explained. Stay for number 1. It was taken off the island. Number 12. The Green Grotto Caves sit on the north coast between Runaway Bay and Discovery Bay in St. Anne, a limestone labyrinth running more than 1,500 meters, named for the green algae that once covered its walls, with an underground lake sitting about 36 meters down and a tunnel that reaches all the way to the sea. Almost everyone who mattered in Jamaica's history passed through here. The Taino left paintings, tools, and pottery on the walls. Spanish settlers hid in these chambers from the invading English in 1655, and it is said the governor held out for weeks in the dark before slipping through the tunnel toward Cuba. Runaway slaves used that same darkness to disappear. And between the two World Wars, smugglers ran guns to Cuba through the very same passages. Here is what no one can explain. The cave has been renamed a dozen times over. Runaway, Dairy, Rum, Dry Harbor, Cave Hall, as if each generation tried to claim it and none could hold it. And still the full tunnel network beneath it has never been mapped. No one knows how far the passages run, where every one of them comes out, or what was hidden in the parts no tour ever reaches. The next cave is covered in carved faces no one can read. The tunnels are still open under the hill. Number 11. The Warminster Rock Shelter, also called Genus, sits in the interior hills of St. Elizabeth in southern Jamaica, one of only about 26 pre-Columbian rock art sites recorded across the whole island. Its walls carry petroglyphs, faces, and figures cut and ground into the bare stone by hand. And archaeologists rank them among the finest that survive anywhere in Jamaica. They are read as spirit helpers, presences set into the rock to watch or to guide. And an owl-like figure looms over the northern entrance as if guarding the way in. But Taino carving was never a writing system. So there is nothing on the wall that can be translated. No key, no alphabet, no way in. By the early 2000s, the shelter had been scarred with modern graffiti. And in 2005, a rescue operation traced and restored the engravings, carried out with the rock art specialist Johannes Lubzer. Here is what no one can explain. That work could measure the figures, photograph them, and clean and protect them, and still not say what a single one of them was for, or exactly when it was cut. Everything about them could be recorded except the one thing that mattered. The next cave keeps just one face, and nothing else. The figures are still ground into the stone. Number 10. Two Sisters Cave lies in the Hellshire Hills of St. Catherine, a pair of limestone caverns set over sinkholes of fresh water the Taino are thought to have drunk from. On one wall there is a single petroglyph, a human face carved into the rock, and across the whole site that one face is the only image the Taino left behind. A carved wooden seat known as a duho, the kind a chief or shaman would have used in ceremony to sit closer to the spirits, was recovered from Hellshire in the early 1990s and now sits in the National Gallery of Jamaica. Here is the question no one has answered: who the face represents, and why a single figure was cut here and nothing else in a place people clearly return to has never been established. The site is threaded with a network of natural caverns and tunnels running deep into the hills, most of them never mapped. And the cave has since been closed to visitors for lack of anyone coming. Whatever else was here, if there ever was anything, the hills kept it. The next cave was used for the dead. The face is still alone on the wall. Number 9. Spot Valley Cave sits in the hills of St. James in western Jamaica, a small chamber only about 8 meters by 12. And it is one of only about 4 sites on the whole island where the Taino painted rather than only carved. About a dozen images were applied to the wall in black pigment, close cousins of the paintings at Mountain River Cave, though dust and old smoke have blurred them over the centuries. It was only properly surveyed again in 2005, with the help of the Jamaican Caves organization. But the paintings are not the strangest thing here. When the archaeologist James Lee examined the floor, he found fragments of human bone and teeth worked into the ground and pushed into the crevices of the cave walls, buried alongside pieces of pottery. Here is what no one can explain. This was a burial cave as well as a painted one, an unusual pairing. And who was laid here and why their remains were wedged into the rock itself rather than simply covered over has never been established. The full contents of the floor were never recovered. The next cave was opened by accident, and it may already be lost. The bones are still in the stone. Number 8. Somewhere in the Hellshire Hills of St. Catherine, a quarry crew was about to blast a section of limestone when a worker warned the manager there was a cave right there in the rock. Cutting into it, they broke open a solitary burial shelter that no one had known was there. Inside was a small assembly of the Taino dead, several human bones, fragments of ceramic pottery, and a 4-inch clay zemi, a molded spirit figure of the kind the Taino kept to house their gods. It was a sealed pocket of the island's oldest history, untouched for centuries, uncovered in a moment by a digging machine. The artifacts were handed over to the Jamaica National Heritage Trust. Here is what no one can explain, and what should trouble anyone watching. After the finds were removed, the quarrying simply resumed. No full excavation was ever carried out. No one held the ground long enough to ask what else was in it. How much more of that burial shelter was cut away? How many more were buried nearby? And what was ground to rubble before anyone thought to look will now never be known. This is the wound Jamaicans keep naming. The record is in the ground, and the ground keeps being sold out from under it. The next thing found in these caves was not human at all. The rest went out with the rubble. Number 7. Jackson's Bay Cave runs beneath the Portland Ridge in Clarendon, at the far southern tip of the island, and it is not one cave, but a system of 14. Discovered only in 1964. With more than 9,000 meters of passage mapped so far, and the longest single cave stretching over 3 kilometers underground. It is considered one of the finest cave systems in the whole Caribbean, and over 10,000 bats live inside it, laid over floors of thick guano. Deep at the second entrance, cut into the rock where the light gives out, are Taino petroglyphs that the surveyors described as possible guardians of the portal. And the Taino believed caves were exactly that, doorways where the living could reach the dead. This same system has given up the bones of 3 creatures that should not have been possible. Here is what no one can explain. Despite decades of survey, the system has never been fully mapped. Its passages still run on past the last recorded point into dark no one has walked. And the surveyors keep finding more where the map says there should be nothing. No one can say what the guardian figures were meant to protect or what they were meant to keep out. If Jamaica's buried history is news to you, subscribe and stay with it, because the next 3 things pulled from these caves are the ones that broke the scientists. The guardians are still watching the entrance. Number 6. In cave deposits scattered across the island, Wallingford, Sheep Pen, Slew's Cave near Lewis Vale, the naturalist Harold Anthony kept pulling teeth and jawbones out of the rock that were far too big for what they turned out to be. They belonged to a rodent called Clidomus, a giant hootia, and it was the largest land mammal Jamaica has ever had. A plant eater far heavier than anything that scurries through the island today. Its Caribbean relatives grew larger still. One of them reached the weight of a gorilla. Here is what no one can explain. Almost nothing is known about how Clidomus actually lived. Not its habits, not its dens, not why it disappeared. Though it seems to have died out before the first people ever reached Jamaica. And from one cave came a single leg bone larger than any Clidomus on record, hinting at something bigger again that has never been named or found. The next creature turned its own wings into weapons. The teeth are still set in the stone. Number 5. In cave deposits across Jamaica, including the Long Mile Cave in Trelawney, researchers kept turning up the bones of a bird that should not have been possible. It was a flightless ibis called Xenicibis, about the size of a large chicken and weighing around 2 kilograms. And its wings were wrong. The hand bones had thickened and curved into a solid club, hollow like a baseball bat, more tool than wing. When the Smithsonian's Storrs Olson first saw them in the 1970s, he was so baffled by the shape that he assumed the animal had suffered some inexplicable disease. It had not. Later analysis showed the bird swung its wings like a flail, striking with them the way another animal would use horns or claws. And 2 of the recovered bones carry the fractures to prove it. A hand bone broken and a centimeter-thick arm bone snapped clean in combat. Here is what no one can explain. This bird gave up flight while surrounded by predators. A boa, the island's own monkey, more than a dozen birds of prey, which should have been suicide. And instead, it turned its wings into weapons no other animal on Earth has ever grown. As the Yale scientist who studied it put it, there's nothing else out there like this in any vertebrate, living or extinct. Whether it was still alive when the first humans arrived is unknown. The next creature was stranger still. The clubbed wings are still in the cave clay. Number 4. In January 1920, digging in the Long Mile Cave in Trelawney, the naturalist Harold Anthony, the same man who had pulled the giant rodent's bones from these hills, worked a small jawbone and a leg bone out of the yellow limestone. They belonged to a monkey. And for the next century, no one could say what kind. It was named Xenothrix mcgregori, and every feature was wrong for a monkey. It had rodent-like legs, unusually few teeth, and a slow tree-dwelling body closer to a loris or a sloth than to anything swinging through the canopy. Its skull was so singular that scientists could not even agree whether it was a true monkey at all or some unknown branch of primate. Here is the question that went unanswered for nearly 100 years. How did a monkey unlike any other on Earth come to exist on one Caribbean island, and where did it come from? A century of guesswork got nowhere. Only in 2018 did extracted DNA finally place it. Work by London's Zoological Society and Natural History Museum, with the museum in New York showing it was a distant cousin of South America's titi monkeys that had drifted to Jamaica on rafts of vegetation some 11 million years ago, and then changed beyond recognition. It was one of 5 primates the Caribbean once had, and every one of them is now gone. It survived here until only a few hundred years ago, its bones lying in the same caves as the island's first people. The next cave holds paintings made where no one could see them. The jaw is still cataloged in a drawer. Number 3. Po-Two Hole sits in the Jackson's Bay cave system on the Portland Ridge in Clarendon, at the far southern tip of the island, and it is one of only about 4 painted Taino sites in all of Jamaica, where almost everywhere else the Taino carved rather than painted. Its walls carry a gallery of images, human figures alongside geometric and abstract shapes, set deep inside the ridge, well back from the light. Here is what no one can explain. Across the Caribbean, Taino rock art is almost always placed where it can be reached and seen, at the mouths of caves and beside pools in the daylight, meant for eyes. This gallery was painted deep in the dark, far inside the ridge, where no eye would ever fall on it by chance. Why anyone carried pigment that far underground to paint where it could not be seen, in a place that had to be found before it could be looked at, is unknown, and the paintings themselves have never been directly dated, so no one can even say for certain when it was done. The next cave holds the largest gallery of all. The paintings are still down there in the black. Number 2. Mountain River Cave sits in Cudjoe Hill near Guanaboa Vale in St. Catherine, a chamber barely 100 feet long, and yet on its walls are at least 148 identifiable paintings. Some counts put it over 200, the largest collection of Taino pictographs anywhere in Jamaica. They were laid down in a mixture of bat guano and ash, along with a handful of carvings, and they show human figures, birds, turtles, and one striking scene of armed figures massed together as if for something. The art was first reported in 1897 and only pinpointed again in 1954, and the cave was declared a national monument in April of 2003. Here is what no one can explain. Because Taino painting was never a writing system, there is nothing here to read, only to guess at. The exact age is unknown, estimated only somewhere between 500 and 1300 years old. And what the armed figure scene was meant to record, a battle, a ritual, a memory, has never been established. 148 figures in a room the length of a bus, and not one of them can be read. Researchers who have studied it speak of a sealed inner chamber, deeper than the paintings, that no one has reached. And no one knows what was put there. Access is now so difficult that a heritage guide reported no one had visited in over 2 years. The trail had simply grown over and closed the room again. The next thing came out of a cave and never came back. The images are still on the wall in the dark. Number 1. In June of 1792, a surveyor measuring land in the Carpenter's Mountains in what is now southern Manchester climbed to a natural cave near the summit of a peak called Spots and found 3 carved wooden figures hidden inside it. They are Taino work, cut from guayacum, the dense hardwood also called lignum vitae, and dated to the 15th or 16th century. And they are among the finest carvings the Taino ever made. One is Boinayel, the rain giver, standing over 3 feet tall, his face marked with the lines of a weeping god. The whole figure polished with river pebbles to raise the resin and turn the wood black. One is a birdman spirit. The third is a canopied figure built to carry a platform for cohoba, the sacred snuff the Taino used to speak with the dead. Only about 12 Taino sculptures survive from the whole of Jamaica, and these are the greatest of them. Here is what no one can explain, and what Jamaicans have never stopped asking. No one knows who carried 3 gods into a remote mountain cave, or when or why they were hidden together in the dark, high up where no one would climb by accident. Within a few years, they were shipped to London, shown to the Society of Antiquaries in 1799, and taken into the British Museum, where they were only formally entered into the collection in 1977, with no record of how they ever left the island. Jamaica has been asking for them back for years. The cave is still on the mountain. The gods are still in London. Jamaica's deepest history is still underground, still unexplained. Subscribe, and we'll keep going down after it.